So I kind of got into freelance editing in around 2021. I was editing for free before that. I was doing like this sort of Fortnite content, these Fortnite highlight videos really. And I was doing them for free back in like 2020, right? So around then, there wasn't a lot of editing content out there for me to learn from. Like there was the occasional like Premiere Pro tutorial and stuff, and there was like the the regular After Effects. Like, those people with those like sorts of desks and they have the plants around and it looks like a very generic studio. Like they're not even trying to make it look like it's their actual room. It's the most studio looking studio you'll ever see, right? And they would give these like sort of basic Premiere Pro tutorials, and that was like all there was. That was really all there was to learn from. Right, so I started my career, and I started off for fun. I didn't think it would turn into anything. I genuinely swear to God, I thought that like the highest I could get in my career was working for a creator around 1-2 million range. I thought that would be insane, and then maybe like $500 per video. I thought anything over that is not possible. Like it doesn't exist. No client pays that. I thought even like the Sidemen or Mr. Beast or people like that would pay maybe like $800 per video at the most. Like I didn't think anything would go over that really. And then like fast forward 3 years later, I've worked with a lot of huge creators way bigger than 1 or 2 million. I've worked with a lot of people that are so big I'm legally not allowed to tell you who they are. I've made a lot of money, like not even to brag, but I've made money that I didn't think I would even touch. Like, I thought the idea of 10k per month was a fantasy, and then to actually go and reach it breaks so many different limiting beliefs. To work with creators I used to actually look up to broke so many different limiting beliefs. I thought, okay, because I had never met anybody remotely famous, let alone somebody who was like somebody you could Google, right? So when I met these clients that I was looking up to, I was like, oh, it is real. These celebrities or these people with like internet fame, oh, they're real. They're not like some robots. They actually exist. And I met one of them in real life. And not only did I meet him, I worked with him. That was a huge one for me. So I can say I've accomplished a lot, and there is definitely a lot of things. 3 years is quite a while, and there's a lot of things that I've done wrong, I can say, because unlike this current generation, there wasn't a lot. There wasn't really like a lot of people to learn from back then, which is why I make these videos. It's because I know that all we really had was Finza, I guess. We had Finza, and he would only show you how to do the practical side of things, and how to make a preset, how to make a transition, how to do this and that. And he was fun to watch. And I met a lot of people through there, and like I think that was great. But when it comes to like landing clients, when it comes to sticking to it when it gets tough, when it comes to motivation mentality, there wasn't really anything there editor wise, and like the only thing that would be there was like that Prince EA guy who made those like motivational videos. There wasn't a lot, right? There wasn't a lot of stuff. So that's why I make these videos, and I want to talk about the mistakes that I made along the way, and more importantly, the most important and the biggest, like the 3 biggest mistakes I made. And I want to talk about like the fact that you're probably going through them right now. You may have made them, or I want to stop you before you actually make them. Okay. And I think these are really important because not only did they stunt my trajectory and my growth, like everything I achieved was great, but I reckon if it wasn't for these 3 things, I would have definitely would have achieved it much sooner. And I want to start off with the fact that I was comparing myself, or I was too busy looking at others that I didn't have enough time to look at myself, right? So I would see these editors on Twitter, and I'd always want to be like them. I'd want to be friends with them. I'd want to talk to them and stuff because I admired their work. I thought, how does somebody actually get to this level? Like even to this day, I see motion designers, and it's normal. Like you see something you don't understand and you want to understand how they do it. But then by the time you get there, it seems very simple to you. Okay. So I still to this day see those people. But back then when I saw people I enjoyed watching, or people I admired, I'd always sort of compare myself with them. And it was even worse when it was people that sort of started at the same level as me, started at the same time as me. Like I had friends, and I'm still friends with them in the editing space that have progressed much faster than me. right? Much faster than me. They've always been a few steps ahead, and I always compare myself. And only recently, like within the past year or so, I kind of stopped doing that. Not even like a year, maybe like give it 8 months tops, right? But then I was comparing myself a lot with them, and I realized I wasn't realizing that how much it affected. I knew it affected me. Like I knew consciously and logically this is bad for my health, but at the same time, I didn't realize the sort of second order of consequences that would come. You see, it's one thing to compare yourself with somebody and realize, okay, this is bad, I should stop doing this. But it's another thing to realize that you comparing yourself and feeling bad about it and then continuing to do it is going to affect how much you progress in the long term, how good you feel in the long term, where you end up in the long term, right? And there's this term, second order of consequences, that I learned from a guy called Sam Evans, right? And he talks, it essentially goes into the idea that you make one thing and you will only think about the sort of consequences that it could bring short term, right? Or the one problem that it comes with. But you don't think about how that affects you long term, right? And some people are going to call it overthinking, but it is just second order of consequences. So think about it like this. Let's say I'm just working, I'm just chilling, I'm editing my video, and my cousin would call me and say, hey, I'm moving out. I have nowhere to fit this TV. Do you want it? Because they already have TVs over there. I'm like, yes, I want a TV. Yes, I want a free. Who doesn't want free stuff? It's a free TV. So I take the TV and I set it up somewhere in the house, maybe in my room or something. And I'm like, okay, cool. I got a TV in my room, so I guess I can start watching it. So then you start watching it. And that's good. That's like great, brilliant. I'm watching this new TV. I love it. And then you start to realize that, well, I'm not going to use this. I'm not going to get this free TV and not use it. So you continue watching it. But then by the time it's too late, right? You're realizing, oh, I've been watching too much TV. But by the time you realize that, it is too late. And now you've built this habit. Your brain has built this habit. Your brain has gotten used to the idea of wake up, watch TV, or have breakfast and then watch TV. But prior to this TV being in your life, there was no time for TV. There was only working and learning, right? And learning was a huge part. Like it was like the one light, the one ray of light that would make me feel like I wasn't behind anyone, or make me feel like that I was like I was like significant or intellectually competent, right? So like learning or, reading books, like I have a bunch, you can see books in the background that I've got, right? That's something that would make me feel good about myself. Okay, so when I see other people at my level improving and they go up and up and up, and I'm like, oh, I want to get up and up and up, right? Oh, why am I not increasing and getting better like they are? And then I end up doing so, or at least I read a book and I feel like I'm doing so. That makes me feel better about myself. Okay, that's one thing to improve, but as soon as I start watching TV, that makes me feel bad. And because I'm watching TV, that's taking time away from my reading. So that makes me feel even worse and worse and worse and worse. And then next thing you know, you feel like instead of being 2 steps behind somebody, you feel like you're 5 steps or 10 steps behind. And then you feel like you're doomed forever. And then you go through this like rabbit hole of like, what am I doing wrong? Well, the first thing that you did wrong was you took a free TV, you idiot. You didn't think about how that was going to work out long term. So when I was comparing myself with these people, I never thought about how it would affect me long term, right? I would think, oh, I'm not as good as them, and then cope by doing something stupid, something that would make me feel happy in the short term, but not happy in the long term. I.e., just scrolling on Instagram thinking it would go away, and then having a laugh, haha, look at this funny meme, or constantly eating like shit. Like that's something I'm gonna get into later on, but I was constantly eating like shit and just eating my problems away, and that didn't help. That just made things worse, because afterwards you'd be like, oh great, now I feel like shit and I've just eaten like shit and I feel fat as fuck, right? So I didn't really think about how this would affect me long term, right? Comparing myself with people was so bad on me because it would only dig yourself a deeper hole. Like, if you think someone's ahead of you, then work harder to get to that point. don't like sit there and cry about the fact that you're not there yet, or that you're never going to get there. Because if you tell yourself that you're never going to get there, you're never going to get there, right? People don't realize how much their words matter. Whether you're making promises to somebody, or whether you're like making a promise to yourself and talking about yourself to yourself, or talking about yourself to others, or just anything you say matters, right? But you don't realize it. You're constantly thinking like, oh, it's fine. It doesn't matter. It's just words anyways. Like, but you don't realize if you say that you're lower than somebody, you're gonna be lower than. You're gonna constantly think like that to the point where it's true. It is objectively true that you are behind and that you are lower than somebody. And I didn't think about that. And that was like step one. And then there were these like pile of consequences that would just sort of fall down like an avalanche straight after, right? And I didn't think about that. I didn't have a lot of self-worth. And that was probably rooted from other stuff that happened previously in my life. But I never focused on myself and tried to fix it. I just thought that if I was keeping up with others, I was doing well for myself. And that's such a horrible thing to think. Oh, if he's doing well and I'm catching up with him, that means I'm doing well. Bro, why would you do that to yourself? Like, I did something that would also kind of counteract this. Something that was probably the one thing that was keeping me going. And that was thinking about where I was before, which is what I think you should be doing. Every time you get a result that pushes you closer to believing that your dreams are going to be real, right? So you land your first clients and you think, okay, this editing thing, it's not bullshit. You can actually land clients. It's not that hard. It's not as hard as I thought. So you land a client, you land more clients. And next thing you know, editing and landing clients, the idea of landing clients just suddenly becomes easier and easier to you, to the point where you're like, instead of saying landing clients is hard, you say landing clients is easy, right? And you made that transition because you landed the clients. But, you can still make that transition by just saying landing clients is easy. But that's besides the point. And if you start like scaling your prices and you realize that your prices are starting to scale, you'll think about the times when they were, when you were charging less. And then you think about the times when you made almost no money, and then you realize that you're making a lot more money. And then next thing you realize your life is different. And your life is different because of the results that you got. And then whenever I would do that, I'd feel like, okay, yeah, my life is pretty good. Like, I complain too much, but my life is much better than it was before. And it's one thing to do that, but it's another thing to realize, okay, if I could get the results to get me from A to B, what makes me think that I can't go from B to Z, right? Like, obviously in small steps, but like, if I manage to move my life into a better position, if I manage to go from not editing to landing a few clients and actually getting an income for myself, what makes me think I can't scale that and start progressing and moving forward with my life to the point where I'm charging a lot more money and I'm working with clients I actually want to work with, right? Like, your skill, this is how you should think about it. Your skill and your results and everything you've achieved is proof that you can do it, right? It's proof that you can progress. You shouldn't take this sort of shit for granted. Like, you shouldn't, sorry for the language, you shouldn't take it for granted. You shouldn't think, oh, it's so hard to get to X amount per video. Like, it's so hard to make 2K per month or 3K per month or 5K per month. It's so hard. It's going to be hard if you keep telling yourself that. And if you keep pushing yourself down, right? But think about it. If you're making like 800 per month or 1,000 per month, brother, you're making 1,000 per month. Like, remember the times when you made 0 per month? Like, you were a bum. You were such a bum. You were 2 bums, right? You were that much of you're bum squared, right? You were doing nothing before, and now you're doing something. You are doing something which is literally better than nothing. So what makes you think you can't go from something to something bigger and then bigger? You have proof. There's evidence of you changing your life. What makes you think you can't change it again? Sure, it takes time, but that's all it is. It's just time. The only thing that makes you think that you can't do it is your patience. And even worse, if you take the people around you, right? You take the people that you've worked with, your friends online, and you say, oh, they're progressing faster than me, then that means I can't do it. You're not helping yourself. Everyone's got a different story, right? Everybody is different. Everyone's got past experiences that may help them or sort of stop them and prevent them from increasing and scaling their prices and getting better. Everyone is different. Like, please stop comparing. Like, the second I stopped comparing myself to, my friends and I guess competitors and other editors, my life got so much better. So much better. I just felt so much healthier, and I felt so much like I got closer with my own identity. I kind of understood and knew who I was. Okay. And now I kind of want to move on to the second part, which is you got to do with identity. And that is investing in myself. Now, what I mean by investing myself is I didn't think about myself and what I could do to be better, right? So I go to the gym, and I always have been going. I've been going to the gym since I was like 15. And that is one thing. But it doesn't matter if you eat poorly, which is a habit that I've had for the longest time. And I can say now that I'm doing pretty well. I'm eating much healthier than I was before. In fact, in my first 10K month, I was non-stop ordering. I was literally non-stop ordering, and I would stay up until 2 or 3 in the morning and then go to bed for a few hours and then wake up at like 8 or 7 and then do the whole thing again and then order more junk food. And it got to the point where I had to take the month after that, I just take the whole month off. I had to stop. I was like, I'm just going to do nothing but rest and chill because I just feel so like no sleep, and junk food was horrible. I did not invest into my health, and people will talk about this all the time. Oh, health is wealth. Health is the most important thing. And I'd always be like, yeah, fuck, I get it. Just shut up. I get it. But it really is. Like, I'm in such a good mood right now. I'm genuinely happy. I used to struggle to say that I was happy, and when I was in uni, I was miserable, man. I was so miserable. I ate so poorly, and this isn't just about eating. This is about a lot of things. Like, investing in yourself goes into like documenting your journey and thinking more about it, and then thinking about your mental health, and then stuff like your physical health as well. Or back then, like I said, there wasn't a lot of coaches, a lot of stuff that I could buy. There were plugins. Cool. I don't really buy plugins. I got them, but I didn't buy them. I never really took the time to properly invest in myself or get something that would help. Like my setup, for example. My setup it's better now. Not by a lot. I've got a MacBook now, which is great. But back then I would only stick with this £800 PC my dad gave me from like 2009, and I stuck with that. And then I'd always complain about, my render errors and this and that, and did nothing about it. I was making the money to change it. I just didn't do anything about it. Investing myself was one thing I wish I could do more. Buying more. Like, I am the machine that makes money. Take care of the machine, because if you can take care of that machine and then improve that machine, it will then make you more money. So why aren't you taking care of it? Okay? If a car has a flat tire, you don't get a paint job of the car. You don't start installing shit inside the car. You don't start adding spoilers to the car. You put in a new tire. You got to take care of it, right? Because you get it. It won't drive and it won't function. You need to, if you want to edit, if you want to be happy in life, bro, like you gotta start doing things that are gonna hurt you short term and benefit you long term. There is, along with second order of consequences, there's something called effect horizons. So like that TV, right? Like that TV, the TV analogy, it's like effect horizons is like if something is to benefit you in the short term, most likely it's going to harm you in the long term, and vice versa. So if I eat a horrible diet of like 3,000 calories or something, 4,000 calories, and then I start cutting down, I start eating healthier foods, I'm not gonna like it. My body's gonna be craving the sugar that I was constantly eating. It's gonna crave the carbs. It's gonna crave all these fatty foods that I was having before. My body got used to that. My body's not used to this new diet, right? And it's gonna hurt me. It's going to be painful short term. After like a week or two, right? I'm going to be fine. I'm going to stick with it. And then long term, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be healthier. I'm going to be more bright. I'm going to look healthier as well, right? And that's the thing I should have done. Never did, right? I told you, like, my first 10K month, I ate like the worst diet I think I ever could have. I'd have like one meal and it would be like Taco Bell or McDonald's or something, right? Yeah. Genuinely should have invested more into myself, thought more about myself. Like, I have a lot of documented pictures, which I use for context in videos like these sometimes, or if I'm making something, I'll add images. But I wish I did that more as well, documenting my journey, because that was the one thing, like, except for reading books and, you know, learning more, that was the one thing that made me feel like I was, you know, that I kept going. Because now I love learning, because learning would find progress, and then progress would achieve results, and then results would lead to leverage, and leverage is what attracted the clients, right? So what I mean by that is, by learning, by reading these books, or by learning something new on the software, I would feel better about myself. I'd be like, okay, I'm obviously progressing. I realized that I made a mistake and I changed it. I learned how to make a new effect. I learned how to do this or that. And that made me feel better about myself. That made me feel much better. Like, both, it was both the fact that I was getting better mentally, and it was also the fact that I felt like I had a clear idea of what editing was and what I was doing, and you know, how I was getting to the end destination that I wanted to get to, right? That is progress. And progress, the more you do it, will lead to results. So then when I start improving my editing, when I start getting better, okay, the video obviously will do better. Not obviously, but the video is more likely to do better. And then when I have videos that do better, when they get more views or something, or the client's happy with it, or has higher AVD, right? Then that was a result that I have achieved. That is a statistic. I can now use that, and then that'll go onto my portfolio, or that'll go onto my Twitter or whatever, and then all of that piles up, and that forms leverage, right? That's the leverage I have over other editors. That's saying I can do something that they couldn't. I can prove that I've done something that they couldn't, and then clients eventually pick me, right? All of that is that sort of the whole sort of thing of effect horizons, right? Simply just like something like aiming to learn, or eating better, making me more productive, which would push me to learn more, right? It's this whole sort of butterfly effect. But it helped me in the long term, but in the short term, I had to do something like change my habits, or change my eating habits and stuff like that, right? And it's this huge long scale, and one thing that you change now, something that you change right now, today, can like make a beneficial impact a year later, you know, which is kind of what happened with me, right? Let me just put it into perspective of how easy it is to succeed as an editor nowadays. Like, nowadays, it is definitely easier than it was before. There's more resources, more information online, more coaches and stuff like that, more products and whatnot. All these things help you, right? There's more editors, and more editors, when they progress, you know, there's more access to information, right? There's so much more stuff to learn about nowadays than there was back then. And I talk about that like it was 10 years ago. It was 3 years ago, but still, editing wasn't quite as big as it is now. And it is much easier. And back then, I did the worst of the worst. Like, I was very insecure about myself. I wouldn't do things to counteract that insecurity. I would continue to feed into it, which was so much worse, right? I had all these like poor habits that were screwing me over in the long term, right? And I never really thought about that. So that was a huge mistake, not investing in myself. So like I said, that goes into stuff like your mental health, your physical health, your performance with editing. So if you are looking into watching these videos, for example, that is an investment. That is good, right? These videos I make to inform you guys and tell you more about editing, and, you know, trying to get you to not make as many mistakes as I did, right? The whole point of this is so that I can be exactly who I needed when I was becoming an editor. I make these videos and I look back and I'm like, okay, I did this and that, and I wish I didn't do that, so I'm going to make sure nobody else does it. That is like the one quote I live by: be who you needed. So if you're watching these and you realize that you're learning more and you're preventing yourself from making mistakes, or you're no longer making mistakes that I used to do because of these videos, that is good. That is investing in yourself. And that is the sort of habit you should start, something that you should start adopting more if you don't do it enough, right? Because this changes your entire trajectory. There's people who can reach like insane levels of income or land insanely huge clients because they adopt, because they start investing in themselves. My editor, who would edit my videos, he had all the access to everything that I would show him, and I'd help him with things from different sort of things that he needed with editing. And he's been editing for a couple months, and this guy landed like a 6 or 7 million subscriber clients, like way faster than I ever did, right? Huge. So it's like things like this, investing in yourself, it invites so many different habits to come into your life. And once these habits come in, there's no space, there's no room for those poor habits, right? So for example, like eating poorly, a huge one. Like what you eat is probably the most important thing. And I used to think this was a gimmick because I didn't really do it for myself, but I do it for myself now, and I feel so good. Like, let me show you, for example. I'm listening to Crazy Frog as I'm recording this, and it's been like this for about an hour or so, and I just feel so good about myself. Like I can't stress, I feel so good about myself. Okay, I can do this and I can talk without having to stutter or mutter a bunch of nonsense, or I hope so at least, and still get the job done, right? Which something I could never do back then. Like I used to sit in my uni room, in my depressing little prison room, genuinely shaped like a prison cell, by the way. And I would sit here sulking a lot. And when I turn on the camera, it would take me like 20 minutes to turn on the camera. Like it would take me 20 minutes to record a video. And then I would sort of be like, well, yeah, you need this. And I'll keep it low because, I don't want to talk to you. But I'll do whatever now. As long as these sort of videos have an effect on people, I'm fine. And the food I eat, the habits that I do, I didn't realize how important they were. So please take this as an example to seriously start investing in yourself, right? Whether that's buying something to help you with your sleep, or whether that's buying something to help you with your editing, or whether that's buying something to help you with your food, or buying better food, or whatever. Because you may be afraid of dropping in income or your bank balance going down, but think about it this way. You are a machine that needs to function properly to create better results. And it can only do that if you feed it the proper materials, the proper tools. You need to give it the proper tools, right? Do that by investing in yourself. And this third and final one, okay, is kind of another thing that's going to help you a lot. This is something that's going to change your habits as well. Hanging out with regular people. Big mistake hanging out with. Okay, let me explain why this is. Now, I had a lot of friends starting off with editing, and a lot of them didn't really understand or didn't really agree with what I was doing. Not because it was like dodgy or anything. Like editing isn't dodgy, but it was the fact that I was making like no money, and I was still pretty persistent on doing it. $10, you're not gonna make it. $10 per video, dude. Look at him. He's a producer. He makes like $200 per video. And then I had other friends who wouldn't support me with like other stuff in terms of editing, or at least it sounds a bit ridiculous, but like when they wanted to go out and I said I couldn't because I had to edit, they would say these words. They would say these things like talking about like how I was prioritizing my work over my friends and becoming some sort of corporate sellout. Like, bro, I'm editing a video for like $150. Would you relax, please? Like, I'm not some sort of corporate sellout. I just want to make a bit of money. I enjoy this stuff, and I made a promise to my client that I'd get the video done, and you're complaining, right? And another thing is, like, when you listen to these videos, half of the stuff I say is probably going to sound like really insane, like really weird to regular people. Like, if you tell them about, you landing clients, or you making a lot of money, or you starting to adopt different habits, things that are unconventional to the regular person, They're gonna be like, why'd you do that? That's so weird. Or like, you know how people say they go to the gym and they like to eat healthy foods, or that they have to track their calories and their macros and stuff, and it all gets into really specifics, and then somebody will say that's an eating disorder. Well, that's because they are trying to reach goals, and in order to do that, the most optimal thing they could do is track their macros and calories, right? That is a habit you need to adopt as a bodybuilder or as a power lifter, right? So if you want to get into that, that's something that you do. And that is an unconventional habit that regular people don't do on day-to-day life. It's the same thing with entrepreneurship. There are certain things you're going to have to do, certain things you're going to have to say, like changing the things you say, changing the way you talk about yourself, changing the way you think and talk about your business. Like when I talked to my mom and I was like, Mom, I landed my first, I'm making $200 per video now. It's good money, right? It's like, oh, that's cute, but it's not gonna be anything long term. She still doesn't believe that editing is gonna be anything long. Like I could tell her about some contracts that I've been offered and she wouldn't believe it, or she would just think that's not real, or something like they're very in denial, right? Especially if you have parents who are from, like, if you have parents who grew up in traditional cultures, so Middle East or somewhere in Asia, or like Eastern European parents, or like just parents with like very traditional parents, really, because they were exposed to beliefs that were, well, traditional, right? And when you start to do things that are not traditional, things that are very unconventional, they start to think, why is he doing that? Why is it like their belief system is telling them that you don't do that. Normal people don't do that. Why is he doing that? And then they'll start trying to install those beliefs onto you. But these beliefs, they stop you from getting to your goal. If you want to make a certain amount of money, if you want to learn a certain client in editing, you're going to have to do certain things that normal people wouldn't do, right? And then when normal people tell you to stop doing that, there's this vulnerability to you where you don't know a lot of entrepreneurs. The people around you in real life. Why is it so bright in my room? Stop that. Right? Normal people, they're not going to understand it. And when they tell you to do these sort of things, you're prone to listen to them. Do not listen to them. Like, this is going to sound really bad, and I don't think I've ever said this publicly, but when my parents talk, sometimes I don't even listen, because I'm like 19 now. I'm not like an adult. I know teenagers often think that they're adults, and I probably am, but people wouldn't think that I'm smart enough to sort of disregard my parents' advice. But my parents' advice is good and safe for someone who wants to live the regular life, which I do not. I strive to have some sort of meaning and some sort of purpose in life that is significantly bigger than your average person. And that requires me to do certain things and to adopt certain behaviors, say certain things in order to get there. Something a bit more extreme, something a bit harder, more disciplinary. And they wouldn't quite understand that because they live the lives of regular people, which is fine. But in order for me to get to where I want to be, I have to start disregarding the word of regular people. Like, I make these videos on YouTube for people who want them, who want to listen, right? Because I understand the audience, you guys watching this right now, you actually want this advice, right? You come here because you actually want to learn how to edit. And my friends I used to have would say, like, why aren't you on TikTok? You're so stupid for not going on TikTok. TikTok gets you so many views. And I'm like, TikTok's full of idiots and people with like half a brain and the other half of their face just sort of melting off like idiots who don't really consume, like, they don't really consume or understand anything they have. There's no depth to TikTok content. So I'm like, I don't do it, and that's why. And they're like, oh, but you're so dumb for that. Like, aren't you an editor? You should know that you get more views on TikTok and less on YouTube. And I'm like, it's not about the views, bro. It's about what this content does to the people watching this. And it's like, you feel like you're surrounded by idiots, but you're just surrounded by people who don't quite see the world the same way you do, or they don't quite instill the same beliefs that you have to, or that you do, because you have a different goal to them. So, like, when someone says, like, oh, you stay in, like, my parents tell me I stay inside. My entire family does. My grandma, currently staying with us, she's like, if you stay down this path, you're going to be very fat. Because what I've been doing is I've been working on something pretty big, and I've been locking myself in my room for like days now. I would wake up 6:40 or 7 a.m. and I'd go to bed at 10 p.m. and I would just work throughout the entire bit of that. And I'd start eating at like maybe 2 p.m. or something because I'd really want to get my mind sharpened, right? And she'd be like, you can be very fat if you stay indoors and you don't go outside, and you'll have no friends. And my mom says the same thing, like, you need to talk with friends, you need the outside world. And I'm like, thank you, mom, for the advice, but I don't need it. Like, there are certain things I have to do if I want to reach my goals. I don't tell her that because she'd think I'm insane or she'd think I'm being dismissive or something, right? But that's a whole different story, right? Point is, like, regular people, they have good intentions, they have good heart, but they don't understand, and you can't just tell them so they understand, right? Unfortunately, the only way we can really show them that it's real and what we're doing is going to work is by showing them results. Now, my mum's not open to editing at all, but back then she would say that I'd have to get a job, go stack the shelves in Sainsbury's and Tesco's and whatever. Like, she'd tell me to go stack shelves and get a proper job. But nowadays, when she's like, if you need money, you can always edit a video, and I'm like, oh, that's good. That means you're more open to the idea of me actually having an online job rather than getting an in-person job. But, you know, whatever. But still, there's nothing we can do, there's nothing we can say except have to disregard them and listen to the people online, right? That sounds crazy because you can't really trust people online, but I have friends online that I've known for like 4 years, and I trust their judgment more than I trust, like, my uncle who's a professor, and I used to really look up, like, he's the one that got me into reading books, right? And as smart he is, as wise he is, as smart and wise as he is, some of his methods are very traditional, something that I would do if I wanted to result in getting a job, which is nothing wrong with that, but it's not what I want to do, right? So yeah, right? Those are 3 mistakes I wish I didn't make. So comparing myself with others, not investing in myself, and listening to regular people. 3 things that expose you to completely dangerous and destructive habits. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and bye.